You guys ready to go?
Very much so.
Jay, all
Much
ready?
better than small life. Much better.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting. It seems like such a long time ago. But welcome everyone. At this time, we need a motion for approval of the agenda for our August 27th Executive Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Approval of prior meeting minutes. Is this, we've got several sets of minutes. Jill's giving me
What
this
is
slide.
it? If the closed, we'll do it, I'll pass out and we'll do it closed.
Okay, so we've got June 24th, June 25th, and August 5th that we need to approve tonight or this afternoon. Does everyone have a chance to review those minutes and prepare for a test?
So moved.
Sheet of paper? Okay, is there a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Are you going to take care of the introduction?
Yes, I shall. We have a new, title now. We have a new Chief Business and Marketing Officer. Just wanted to make sure. And Steve has a very interesting background. I'm very, very happy to have him. We developed a dialogue probably 2-3 months ago almost, right? Based upon his availability. He was the past Chief Business Officer at Cardinal and has a very interesting background. I think really reflects our movement to maybe a little more of a business paradigm, which I have complete confidence that we can continue on with our public roots, but also do it in the best way possible. Steve's background has been in finance and commercial managed care. He's worked internationally. And on top of that, he has a wonderful demeanor. So, very happy to introduce Steve Timmons to all of you.
Thank you.
You might want to fill in some of the blanks I glazed over your pad. That's pretty.
Yeah. As Brian said, I spend most of my time in the financial arena, working for organizations that Chicago Mercantile Exchange, Charles Schwab, TIA for the financial side. Well, pretty much spent most of the time overseas, a lot of the time overseas in that, and still had home base in the U.S. So my wife and children told me I had to get out, cannot stop doing that. Then worked on the healthcare side, worked for Value Options, until we put it in a position to be sold to Beacon, and during that time period transitioned to Cardinal Innovations for about 3.5 years, and started speaking with Brian, and we found there was a good match, and so therefore joined Smoking. I look forward to contributing the best way I can. Be glad to answer any questions.
The areas that Steve will have primary responsibility for is provider network, public policy and marketing in Shelley's area. And we're kind of combining 2 or 3 aspects of provider network that has to do with credentialing and monitoring, kind of all in one big umbrella. So it's a couple of different assignments within that. So that seemed to be a good fit.
We welcome you.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, the next item, Brian, legislative and other updates.
We can cover 5 and 6 all together here, I think. I've spent a considerable amount of time in Raleigh, and I very much appreciate all that especially the executive staff do to allow me to be able to do that, number one. much as I try to pay attention to things back here, when I'm up there, it's kind of like getting in a submarine or something. I'm not sure the right way to describe it, but it's quite an engulfing environment. And most of my time spent there has been around Medicaid reform and the budget, and those two things are so closely linked, and of course they have such a tremendous impact on our organization as well as the other LME MCOs. Rick Zucchini, we really need to get him on the ground here at some point. He's our contract lobbyist. He does a fantastic job, absolutely top shelf. Be dead without him. I guess the long and short of it is I would not be surprised if we saw in what order things have to do. I think there's going to have to be some kind of continuing resolution about the budget, and then in as little as the next couple of weeks, I think we could see agreement on Medicaid reform. And there was a very large, I'm not sure what word to use, whether it was a loss, a concession, what have you, but a big piece of the House's position, changed in the caucus when they agreed to the Senate's position around the inclusion of commercial managed care, which has been a gigantic area of debate and negotiation. It's probably the biggest area of disagreement between the House and the Senate around Medicaid reform and budget. So once that changed, that really was kind of like pulling a pin out of a gear. You really could see things start to move more quickly. Some of the leadership positions changed as a result of that. And I think the next big thing that they want to deal with is what to do about all of us. What role do LME MCOs play in the future of managed care, both on the commercial and the PLE side, which is just another 3 letters to represent, provider-led entity is really an ACO, but I think people wanted to come up with their own acronym. So, we're in the finals, I can tell you that. And working hard to craft public policy in a way that I think will be in the best interest of our future. I'll leave it at that. And of course, the fund balance issue has been, bandied about quite a bit. There is a great interest initially with the Senate, but as the House and other concession, loss, again, whatever word we would use, a change for the House's position on the budget is, having to increase spending. So they're going to be looking for some money that they hadn't anticipated. So you put all of that together, and you got the General Assembly looking for money. Let's put it that way. And there's a lot of question about our fund balance and across the board, who has what are the rules around it, how it can be designated, how it can be protected, how it can be used, who has the authority around all of that. So there's been a really big swirl around all of those topics that I've been very closely involved with especially the Senate leadership. So that will be a part of Medicaid reform as well. So that's what I can tell you.
What, mentioned leadership changes, what specifically are you referring to there?
Why don't I catch you later about that?
Any other questions? closed session pursuant to Oklahoma Statute 143-318.1A3 to consult with attorneys in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege concerning matters of litigation, evergreen, and to prevent disclosure of information as privileged or confidential pursuant to Oklahoma Statute 122C, 126.1, or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All in
But
favor,
sure,
say-
it's hard.
say aye. Aye. All right, we're good, Jerry?
We good there, bud.
Okay. I'd like to do this to you. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, executive committee is adjourned. Okay.
First thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next is approval of the June 25th Finance Committee minutes. Do I have a motion? Or any corrections?
Move that be approved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Fred with the financial reports.
Okay. A few comments before starting. This is a review as of June 30th, so as of the close of the last fiscal year. They are unaudited figures, so you will in succeeding months receive a formal audit review of these figures, and they may change a little, probably not a lot. The other thing is, on this cycle, I will introduce a new financial statement. It will be effective as of July 1st, but I thought it appropriate to review with the committee now, especially in reference to the commitments the board has made as far as fund balance is concerned. It's a standard financial statement. It's called the cash flow statement. It essentially specifies cash that comes into the organization and the cash that goes out within a given period, so that you can kind of follow it along and sew it into the existing financial statements with a better understanding of what the organization's cash position happens to be. I will also introduce the July 30th, 31st statement in reference to sharing what the commitments look like as of the start of the current fiscal year that we are in. So there's a lot of caveats, but let's begin the review as of the fund balance as of June 30th. Cash checking and interest account is at $89.4 million. The Medicaid risk reserve as of the end of the year stands at 18.6. The investment in the North Carolina Capital Trust currently stands at 14.3 million. Accounts receivable under the Medicaid waiver stands at 2.9. One can honestly say that is probably a normal level during the course of the year, and we will not see that very much vary in amount very much during the course of the coming year. Going to the liabilities part of the balance sheets, accounts payable stands at 10.6 million. You will notice again that there are two due tos here. One is a due to the Division of Mental Health. The other is due to the Division of Medical Assistance. Two issues. When one draws down from multiple appropriations as far as the Division of Mental Health is concerned, it is negotiated through the Alpha system. The Alpha system is kind of our claim system. If something gets squeezed or merged not quite right, and it gets forwarded on to NC Tracks, which is the state's processing system, you can actually overdraw on an account. And that can precede any corrections made to moving, and this is standard, funds between one fund to another. And this indeed occurred during the course of the year. They were not significant, they were not large, but it was a timing issue before we caught what Alpha was doing. So in essence, we are being charged with overdrawing a specific account even though we had the funds available as a whole. It's been addressed, it will be corrected, and you'll see those corrections in succeeding months. But that's due to the Division of Mental Health. The Division of Medical Assistance is far more significant in its impact. This has to do with the National Provider ID number that is associated with Western Highlands and the Division of Medical Assistance effort to pay everything that they were overdue on, recreated that MPI, and literally paid us for services back in the month of April and May twice for what we had already been paid. We set that out as a liability because we honestly understood that we owed it to them back. We did actually send them a check. And as of now, meaning the current period that we are in now, we are at zero. We do not owe them anything, but as of June 30th, we certainly did. However, there's a $600,000 issue, which is not apparent in this statement because it appears later. And that is on this overpayment that we were overpaid, therefore we overdrew, even though we weren't the ones responsible for overdrawing it. They apply penalties and interest. Penalties in the DMA world is rather significant. They are 10%. And interest payments for that. They have acknowledged, meaning the Division of Medical Assistance, that they owe us those penalties and interest. They amount to just under $600,000. We are in the midst of their corrections and as far as their internal system, taking care of the old Western Highlands MPI number. So we would expect in some succeeding period that we will get those penalties and interest amounts back. But certainly that is not the case as of June 30th, and as of today, that is not the case. However, they do acknowledge that liability, and we should see those payments in the near future. Going back to June 30th, accounts payable as far as the IBNR under state stands at $472,000, and as far as Medicaid is concerned at $14.4 million. Going down to the fund balance, part of this, the current year earnings, meaning expense, revenue over expense for the year unaudited stands at 16.3. For prior years on the Medicaid, it's at 25.4 million. So as a thumbnail sketch, that's going through the balance sheet as of the close of June. This does not represent the commitments that the board has made for the current fiscal year, which is why for the first time you have two fund balance statements before you, and this is as of the end of July with the commitments that the board has made in terms of fund balance amounts and how that changes the picture of things. I will not go through it in detail, but it does match the board resolutions in terms of how those funds were assigned. Any questions in reference to the balance sheet as of June 30th or what was presented as far as July 31st is concerned? Okay. There is enough paper here to kill several thoughts. I will review now what's in blue. And this is a prospective payment, so this is as of this fiscal year, the end of July. It's referred to, and it's a standard financial statement that you don't usually see in government, but you will see in nonprofits and you will see in any commercial enterprise. And it talks about how funds from the beginning of the year, cash, moves from the beginning of the period of reporting to the end of the period of reporting. So as of the end of June, cash available to us amounts to $103 million. Now you want to say, well, how does that tie back to the balance sheet that you just reviewed as of June 30th? It ties back to two lines, and two lines only. It is the cash and impress account, and it's the North Carolina Capital Trust investment. Please keep in mind, we're talking about cash here, which means that we have ready access to those funds should we need it. So what would be kicked out is any form of fixed assets whatsoever, whether it be equipment, whether it be furniture, whether it be the one site that we happen to own the property. You would kick out any accounts receivable. You would kick out anything in reference to the risk fund reserve. It is a reserve. We do not have ready access to it, so you would not consider it in the four corners of a cash statement per se. To explain it is a little difficult unless you have a financial background. The way this is done is you take the beginning cash of a period and you look at the sources of what cash are. One would be accounts receivable, the other is prepaid expenses, those kinds of things. But it goes in an opposite direction of what you would expect. If you think about it, an accounts receivable is what we have a right to receive payment for. We don't have it in our hands. So in essence, it becomes a promise to us for a future receipt of cash. It's not cash in hand. So you actually take that out of the balance of the beginning of the year. And you add to it accounts payable, meaning these are things that we actually owe, but haven't paid yet. So strangely enough, you reverse that from what you would typically see in a balance sheet as well, to come up with the ending cash balance for the period. And this literally shows the flow of funds, the flow of cash from the beginning of a period to the end. The reason I wanted this introduced to the committee and to the board is, as we draw down through time, fund balances, you really do need to see what the effects of that is on available cash to the organization. So this is one way of showing it mixed with ongoing operations on how that's done and how financial results. Any questions in reference to it?
And that the cash number is 92?
Yes.
Yeah.
Once, twice? Okay. Now going to the analysis of revenue and expenditures, and this is as of June 30th. I am first reviewing the column that's on the left side of the sheet, the fifth column, total Medicaid. Service revenue amounts to $263.7 million. Expenses on the service revenue side at $251 million, for a revenue over expense or surplus of 12.7 on the service side. The administrative revenue is at 35.5 for the entire period. Expenses at 31 point. I have to see what I read, what I wrote. 31.9 for revenue over expense of 3.6. So total on the Medicaid side, as far as Medicaid operating, the surplus for the period for the year in this case, since we're talking as of June 30th, stands at 16.3. Going to the right on that same sheet, the third column that's titled Total State and Federal. On the service revenue side, we are at $56.8 million, expenses at $55.1. Revenue over expense at $1.7 million. On the administrative side, the revenue stood at $5.5 million. Expenses exceeded revenue at $6.3. So expenses exceeded revenue on the state and federal side by the amount of $752,000 for the period. So net, in terms of revenue over expense on the state and federal side, amounted to about $940,000 for the year. Under the total, adding all sources of revenue, and here I'm looking at the last column that says total. So total service revenue stands at $325 million, expenses on the service side at $212.2 million, so revenue over expense at 12.8. On the administrative side, administrative revenue at $42 million, expenses at about 38.3, and revenue over expense at 3.9 million. So all total operations, administrative and service from all sorts of funds for the year amounted to the revenue over expense at 16.7. From an operations point of view, then revenue over expense for the period stands at about 4.5%. Questions? Moving to the Medicaid budget to actual, and here I have to condition my comments again because I'm not sure that everybody understands this. This is the clinical services budget. It takes the clinical part of what we do as it was budgeted, not necessarily all the dollars that were received or all of the revenue on the Medicaid services side. This is as it was budgeted compared to actual expenses. So there can be some variation when you look at this sheet and try to match it up with the services report that I just gave. I won't go through it in detail except to highlight several areas of concern which we will of course be following through the course of the given year, and that is inpatient. Inpatient is over budget considerably. This is a direct result of inpatient utilization, meaning it's higher than what was projected. We are aware that our inpatient utilization is higher than traditionally in other LME MCOs, and trying to address that with the efforts that are being made as far as urgent care facility-based crisis at 356, expansion at Colga, and other urgent facility-based crisis efforts that we have invested in. Theoretically, those should impact on inpatient figures in the future, but that is an area of concern. The other was cropped up towards the latter part of the year, has to do with outpatient services. Some of this has to do with the concentration in terms of shifting services more and more to the comprehensives themselves, so specific 5 agencies that we fund. But this is something that we're going to follow up through the coming year and indeed reauthorize some services that have historically not had to require authorization to continue so we can get that under wraps. Under total Medicaid B then, we were over by 3.4 on budget versus actual. Under innovation services, under by 1.8. The overwhelming part of that had to do with an adjustment to the supported employment rate that was made mid-year as far as innovations, that particular service and the innovations Medicaid C. Way under as far as the 1915 B3 related services. This is, of course, a statewide phenomenon given the newness of the services, and they have, of course, been adjusted by MRSA and DMA as far as revenue for this current fiscal year, FY16. But overall, on the Medicaid waiver side, we were under budget on the clinical services side. Questions?
Brad, on to the inpatient services and outpatient services. To make that up, that comes out of fund balance?
No, to make that up, well, you're talking about a cluster. So in essence, everything's rolled up. So it is not whether you're under or over in a particular service, it's whether you're over and under overall.
And you can't take fund balance. Can we take? I mean,
Sure.
If in an emergent situation, could we? Typically, yes, and that's indeed part of what fund balance is for. But in this particular period, that of course is not necessary because there are other areas that were under what our clinical services budget was budgeted to be. The other issue, which is not apparent in the statement, is the actual Medicaid revenue was greater than what was budgeted, so that covers a lot of this as well. And in the other statements, you'll be able to see where that was the case.
But I mean, working itself out.
Yeah.
So you think of it this way, Judy, it's simple. If you take that first hump there, that is in the subtotal, total Medicaid fee, think of that as a subtotal. Okay, I'll go to your tax and accounting background here. And then you have another subtotal, which is total Medicaid C. Then you have another subtotal, total Medicaid B, 3. And then the total Medicaid waivers is net. So that's the accumulation of all the pluses and minuses of the categories, what Fred's saying. And so we're good on that.
How would that compare to last year? Did you notice?
While the numbers have moved somewhat, quite frankly, the only significant difference is, and this is going to be strange to say, we spent more in B3 this in FY15 than we did in FY14. On a percentage basis, it may not seem like much of a difference, but from a service level point of view, it's significant. The other thing that's apparent is it is clear that our inpatient utilization is increasing over time. There is no other way of looking at it. It just has.
Brian, do you see if it happens, I mean, I know it's going to happen, but whether it happens in January or March, when they get the new definitions for IDD in the waiver that they're coming up with, do you think we'll get a better handle on, and I don't want to call it misuse because that would say I don't think somebody's not doing it right, but get a better handle on the providers to actually provide the services more in full that they're billing for than the actual way that they can bill right now, and do a tiny bit of what they're supposed to do because they can get by with it, if that's making some sense.
Let me start an answer. In essence, what's being planned is taking the innovations waiver, which gives a number of services within it and separate authorizations for each. What this does is put into effect, based upon your score as far as this adaptive functioning scale that they're coming up with, places individuals into categories.
Yeah.
And still requires authorizations within them. So it's a tighter system in terms of management, because one, you have a ceiling based upon that person's presenting needs, and you still require authorization within that smaller classification. So theoretically, it should help. We'll see practically whether it does. My issue, and it's apart from financial management, has to do with more about social research, and that is, just because something is valid doesn't mean that it's reliable. We have authorizations all over the place. It's a valid thing to do. The reliability is dependent upon whether Judy, I, and Brian assess that individual's needs in an equal kind of manner. And that we'll see whether it has an effect. Because that's, in essence, one of the reasons this is being done, is to increase the reliability of the measures being used.
Yeah, and I mean, if the definition, it occurs to me that they're giving the providers 4 years to do what they should already be doing. That always makes me very angry. I think it's just a way to let them continue. But in listening to the definition and knowing that these providers are having to self-assess themselves right now, it's going to really be interesting to see how truthful they are with their assessments and how they come more into line with the services they're providing for the amount of money that they're drawing down, which is a big concern to me. And that's why I want more accountability. don't like the idea of the money being paid out and services not being provided. To me, that's a big issue.
Well, I mean, I don't want to prolong this, but, you know, the aspect of this that Fred is addressing, and this may or may not go to your question exactly, is the use of the SIS
Uh-huh.
and the extent to which that will better align need with services and money. It's got to help all of that.
It's got to.
Right, because we're coming from kind of a legacy world where, I mean, you're on the IDB side, it's like, how big could you get that budget to be? And then it's like this, right? Whether you use it or not, you want to always get that, right, maxed out in
Yes.
the budget.
And I want it down.
Right, yeah, you just want to use what you need to use.
What I need, and that's it.
Not tie up all the rest.
Correct.
So that's really what that resource allocation effort is all about, which is a good thing. It's just people are going to have to get used to that idea and not feel like they're losing something that they had.
And I don't have a problem with whether they do or don't, because I think a lot of it is being misused. It really bothers me when I see that we're over, and I know that there could be a lot brought in to make it better, I guess, for me.
Moving on, unless there are additional questions to the Ridgefield expenditure report. We periodically, as each meeting, provided where we stand in reference to the Ridgefield project. Right now, in terms of cash disbursements, it stands at $1.9 million. The only difference between the disbursements and the amount of expenses impacted on financials is actually the deposit that was made for us coming into the building, which is in the amount of $45,000. In terms of this fiscal year, meaning the close of FY15, these expenses will pretty much stand. As far as the project as a whole, we're not done. MIS still has a number of individuals that are at 356 that will move. The data center, which is significant infrastructure supports, which is quite expensive. Air conditioning ends up, they will have to move as well, so there'll be some significant expenses associated with that in FY16. So I'll share that with the committee as I know more and the bids go out and all of that kind of good stuff. Questions? Going to the dashboards, I will not torture you with going through all of them. Just some major ones. The Medicaid funded services, and we're talking about its titled smoking expense ratios. The first one is the medical expense ratio, Medicaid funded services. We'd like it in the range of 90 to 100%, and it's standing just under 96 for the last month. On the state and federal side, it's just about 98% thereabouts as of the month of June. Going to the dashboard that's titled Medicaid Current Ratio. This is current assets over current liabilities. This is just on the Medicaid side, stands at 2.74. This is a ratio of current assets over current liabilities, and for all funding sources at 3.86. Both would be healthy measures of our cash position. Questions or concerns? Okay, going to the year-to-date budget versus actual, and this is titled Medicaid paid claims. What it's gone out as of June 30th in terms of paid claims is $237.6 million. IBNR has been calculated at 14.4, so a total of $252 million thereabouts, which represents 99.02% of Medicaid services budget for FY14-15, which is a good way of looking at it. The pie chart charts, Medicaid services by service category, just reinforcing the notion of where we spend most of our money as far as service categories are concerned. Over half, 52%, are in the areas of innovations and ICSMR. Again, 52% of every dollar we get gets sent to those two service categories. That's significant because please don't take this the wrong way, while the IDD population is probably the smallest served, it's also the most expensive served.
Absolutely. That's,
Expenses by category of aid. Literally speaking, the bulk of our expenses by category of aid are just in three areas. It's blind and disabled, 21 and up, innovations, and AFDC 3 and up. And that accounts for 83% by expenses by category of aid. That being said, the only thing that I would go further to mention is that, as I have mentioned before, our revenue has exceeded our service expenses, and this is on the order of $11.6 million for the period. And as we stand under individual Medicaid services revenue categories, I would say for the period, the only area of concern was actually below projections was Medicaid C overall.
Is it
On
net,
balance, it's fine.
is it net eligibility or is it categories that's helping us?
Here it's titled Year-to-Date Revenue Budget versus Actual.
Yeah, I'm just asking a question. I know we're doing better on revenue than what we projected in terms of a budget. Is it the net number of eligibles or difference in categories of aid?
It's more the net number of eligibles than it is by category.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, and I'm sorry, we don't need to get into all of this now, but if we look at the trend here on the monitoring report, we've dropped about 5,000 since January in our Medicaid members.
Here, a couple of things. One is there is a lag, and this we've experienced it with the DSSs for quite some time now. And there's some variances in when that lag occurs. So what's currently going on, I don't know. I may find out in 2 to 3 months what has occurred during that period, and we'll see what effects it has on the current year financials. That is offset somewhat by a phenomenon that I don't completely understand, and that's on the innovation side, where we have fewer people that are actively receiving innovation services than would be expected. And it varies from 25 to 30 per month. So in essence, you're getting revenue for those folks, but not providing services for them. And why that is occurring, I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
You know, we're wandering around in the bushes now, so.
The last area that I would cover is titled Medicaid Defensive Interval. Now what this is a calculation, and it says on the Medicaid side, if we didn't receive an additional payment for whatever reason, and we had to survive on what we have in the bank now, how long would that cash last in terms of days? And it now stands at 89 and a quarter, which is good. That will decline through time, and everybody has to understand it will decline through time as a result of committing fund balance spending for other initiatives. But it does stand at a healthy place now. I think I was asked by one board member, well, what do you not want this to fall under? And I would comfortably say it would probably be about 60 days. I would not want to see it. Questions? Okay, I'm done.
Next on the agenda, we have county review. Is it you, Brian, or?
Well, it could be, but getting the amounts of money that were budgeted or requested or we received last year. And in some cases, that's good, and in some cases, that's not so good. Now, I don't know, is there something attached, is that sheet?
I don't think it made the board sheet. It made the county.
Well, we have a
advisory.
spreadsheet that shows all of that, and it was what we reviewed at the County Commissioner Advisory Board meeting. There was a fair amount of discussion about that, and I found it ironic that everybody understood the principle behind it, and that I don't want to say it's irrational, but there's a kind of a legacy feature here with this, that when the law was enacted, it just kind of froze everybody where they were in terms of the amount of money. And we listed off several counties that are getting less, and nobody asked what was going to be done about that. Nobody did they?
You know, clarify one thing, the law is that you can't go under, but you can go up, correct?
Let's clarify that. The law is just not clear. 122C, that is what counties are told. It is not that clear at all. Nowhere in 122C does it really say that counties have to maintain this funding. If a county were to ever challenge it, it would be very hard to push it.
There's no enforcement.
It
Yeah,
describes the reasons why it can be reduced. Okay, so it does go into, I don't know if you want, I would say detail around it. It provides reasons why it can be reduced. And as you saw in the case with a county a couple of years ago that reduced theirs all the way to Von Zipper, they simply stated it was for a reason that is allowable under the law, whatever that means. And you know what? The general statute police did not come down and arrest anyone, did they?
Technically, DMH would be the agency charged with enforcing it, and they never have. Now, there have been complaints made to them, and they are not willing to go down that road.
I kind of got the feeling the reason it wasn't brought up was that a lot of the commissioners, the county manager is talking about reducing this, and nobody wants to put their foot out there.
Well, there's 2 or 3 that have.
Yeah, I know Ash is one.
And it's just kind of, well, we're just going to do this, and nobody's going to do anything about it, so we're going to save money this year.
The 2 reductions we received this year are from Ash and Swain. Ash reduced their contribution by $20,000 and Swain by 5.
He was going for 50.
Right.
And Daymark came in and talked to the commissioners, and William did. He really talked up for Daymark to keep this money in the budget. And so they did just cut down to 20, but I have a feeling next year, and especially according to the way the election goes, is going next fall, that's what you're going to be looking at there on more being cut.
Well, the sadness of this goes to people who are either underserved or underinsured or have no sources whatsoever. And it's for folks who reside in their counties. It's not for anybody else.
I think there's some there's difficulty reminding people that that's what the effect of this is. You know, I think there's been times when, you know, perhaps people were unhappy with Smokey, let's just say, and thought that it was going to, you know, hurt Smokey in some way, and it's the citizens of your county that you're hurting. It's just plain and simple. So,
Well, I would think, especially in Ash, I mean, you got a police chief and a deputy sheriff on the board. I would think they would realize how much money is spent at the hospitals, taking care of the deputy at the hospital. The problems in the county created by mental health. You'd think they'd realize that.
I think they're hoping that if the money's not there, they'll end up somewhere else, like Humboldt County, or they'll end up somewhere else and somebody else will have to take care of it.
Yeah, people, that's a kind of another, good one. You always,
Yep.
whether you hear it, that people believe that, people don't just disappear with their problems. They just go somewhere else.
Go somewhere else.
They go into jail.
Yep.
Is that better? Is it cheaper? I mean, it just moves the problem around is all it does, financially or otherwise. So it's always been that way, always will be.
Yep.
You're in the discern.
Okay, we'll go down to updates. Who's going to discuss those?
Just the obvious, and this is somewhat of a repetition. We don't have a state budget yet, so we're working on continuing resolutions. So literally speaking, allocation letters that we would normally expect to receive by now, we haven't. So recall at the passage of the budget in June by the board, I stated, well, some of these numbers may move depending upon what's actually passed. Some of them may indeed move as a result of what we passed. But I'm not in a position to share what that is because I don't know what it is going to be. And I never thought that I would say that in late July, late August, excuse me.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, nothing else. Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. We're adjourned.
You have the proxy for Dr. Peggy and
You can stop him.
And you on the... And I said, I went to the cool about the site. I told you about the site, and it said I already had a password.
Hello, folks, this is Vicki Green on the telephone.
Or should I?
Hello, Vicki Green.
Hey, Vicki Gray.
Oh, really?
Hey Vicki, you gonna leave me with this report, or are you gonna do it?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
It's between the two models.
Oh, is it?
It's part of the video.
So when you're doing your slide, will it be over too? Oh, okay, I got what's there.
What do you mean, right at the dead center of that thing?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Me too. It's the first time I come on this side. I was getting tired of taking back heads.
This is the first board meeting I really
Is it something you want me to move down out of your way, or you all right? Okay, as long as you're fine.
Nice to meet you.
I'm just hiding in the corner.
Billy, good.
Where my sisters had something. They had
Nicer shoes if I put my feet on them. I figure I'm old enough to wear comfortable shoes.
Jared's good? We're not ready yet. Okay. Why don't we get started, everyone? Welcome tonight to our board meeting. It's August 27th, and this time I'll do the roll call. Thank you. Nancy Baker.
Here.
Ronnie Beal. Larry Cox. Casey Cooper. Carolyn Cowell. Ira Dove.
Here.
Joyce Edwards.
Here.
Okay. Maggie Faulkner.
Here.
Vicki Green.
I'm on the phone.
Okay. Myrna Harris.
Here.
Dr. Jeff Heck. Judy Johansson.
Here.
Billy Kennedy.
And then there's a roll call. Yeah.
Okay, whatever you said.
I'm here.
Okay. Michael Lavender. Pat McGinnis.
Here.
Morris Pittman. Judy Poe.
Here.
Mandy Stone. Duncan Sumter.
Here.
And Charles Vines.
Mandy just sent me an email. I think she's trying to participate. She says she's having trouble hearing.
I did hear that, and I'm on the phone. I just wasn't fast enough trying to mute that, but I'm on the phone.
Okay, all right. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the conflict of interest disclosure. Call on Tracy Hayes, our general counsel.
It's just a time where if anybody has a new conflict of interest, potential or actual, that you would please notify us, so we can evaluate whether there is conflict that needs to be disclosed and reported. I won't hear any.
Okay, move right along. Okay, at this time, we'll have public comment. Got the list?
Get Brian. Would you get the public comment right here, Brian? Thank you.
I've never seen this name before. Jerry, how do you say that?
Jerry Rice.
Oh, okay. And actually Mary Short also.
Okay, Mary Short or Jerry Rice? Who's going to go first?
I'll go first. Where do you want us to stand? Up here? All righty. Is it on? Thank you.
It is on.
Hello, Mary Short from Alexander County, and that's my daughter Katie. And so I have a number of items actually. So when it gets to 4 minutes, can somebody sort of clue me in? Okay. So first of all, first item I have has to do with the complaints and grievances summary. And again, the rate per 1,000 individuals served The IDD population is up at 9% are complaining or filing grievances, whereas mental health is at 2.7. 9.0 per 1,000, and then the mental health is at 2.7 per 1,000. And substance abuse, there was a big jump actually, up to 1.43. I'd be worried about that. Okay, so the second thing I want to talk about is the innovations waiver was put out for public comment. So I read the innovations waiver, and I made 16 pages worth of comments. There was a public meeting in Raleigh to go over some of those public comments. And one of the issues that I thought the board of directors needed to be made aware of has to do with Appendix G. It's appendix for participant safeguards. And in the current Appendix G of the innovations waiver, that is where the level 1 incident reports regarding relative as direct service employee, as backup staffing shows up, level 1 incident reports. Duncan can talk to you about that a little bit. So the new waiver, the proposed innovations waiver, is going to eliminate those level 1 incident reports under participant safeguards. And the discussion at this meeting, and it included MCOs and providers and other stakeholders like the ARC and the Autism Society. And they decided that these level 1 incident reports for backup staffing, so that means no backup staff, no staffing and backup staffing appeared for the innovations participant. But this group decided that those backup staffing reports were an administrative burden. So they did choose to eliminate them. So I guess, who cares about participant safeguards if it's an administrative burden? So maybe as an MCO, you might want to tell the state you disagree, and that is a participant safeguard issue, and it should be included in the new waiver. Okay, moving on. So Katie wants you to know that what she loves most about her home is who she shares it with. Under the federal statute, there's a section called enrollee rights. The MCO, they're Medicaid statutes. So 42 CFR 438-100, enrollee rights. Then you have to go all the way down and there's this letter, and it's like A, B, C, D's in little letters. It's kind of hard to read. It's section VI, and then letter 3D, I think. And so 42 CFR 438.100, enrollee rights, compliance with other federal and state laws. So y'all are supposed to comply with other federal and state laws, just not just Medicaid law. And I bring that up as a conversation about the relative as direct service employee policy and how that then will apply to the Department of Labor rule regarding minimum wage and overtime. That these services are no longer considered exempt from minimum wage and overtime, and overtime will have to be paid. I am unaware whether North Carolina is going to create a 40-hour limit so that none of the service providers or the LME MCO would be burdened with having to pay overtime. There's a group of nursing homes that appealed this to federal court, and the Court of Appeals ruled in favor of Department of Labor, that the rule, it was supposed to go into effect in January. They sued, and the district judge put an injunction on it, but now the appeals went ahead and said, no, the Department of Labor is correct. So hopefully those nursing homes are going to appeal to the Supreme Court. But in case it goes into effect, one of the things, so relative as direct service employee, one of the things I want,
4 minutes.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you about is, again, other federal rights. So I found this brief, and it talks about fundamental rights and how disabled people don't have the same fundamental rights that non-disabled people have. And this group, ADAC and Centers for Independent Living, complained about the cap on services and how Let's see, disabled people, control, their ability to control the most intimate aspect of their lives, including who sees and touches their naked bodies, who assists them in preparing for sexual activity, and who touches their genitals in the shower and after toileting. So as you talk about relative as direct service employee, and you think about if this overtime rule is going to be in effect and you're going to limit individual workers to 40 hours, I want you to truly consider whether these individuals have the same right that you have to decide who touches your naked body. So maybe you'll want to change that relative as direct service employee policy and return the rights to the actual participant that federal law allows for. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the body. As children that I work with, the other night, I'm going to bring it up, I talked to Judy a little about this. They were talking about the comprehensive center that they're going to put in for the children at Neil Dobbins when they move. So then the discussion also that Christina brought up, that this was going to help pull the kids back in from out of the other counties where they've been put out, and even out-of-state kids that have been put out. And we're talking about very high-end kids. And we're talking about kids that's got some serious problems that they couldn't be provided for here. So my concern is, if you're going to get that center up next year, where's the capacity built in the community now for those kids that you're supposed to be bringing back? Not only that, but are the schools ready to handle that? Because if providers ain't ready, the school ain't going to be ready. So, and we're talking big money. I think it's a serious thing that we need to have a discussion on to make sure that the capacity is built, because getting it up, running as a crisis center, I can understand that. There's more to these children than just a crisis. You better be building something sustainable for their lives before you start thinking about just crisis. If you don't have a sustainability, the crisis ain't gonna work. The other thing is that the other night we talked, heard the CEO talk about the crisis center, and this is something I want to bring up just to make sure that it should be said maybe a different way, because it was referred to at the crisis center over at 356 or 357, 356. It was referred to as, you don't want to go to the emergency room, you need to go to the behavioral health. I think if you talk about it in the sense of going to the crisis center, if you've got behavioral health, and stop right there. Because you could be in a liability situation if you say don't go to the ER, because that might be where they need to go. So I think I'm just cautioning everyone who's saying it, even the CEO or anybody else, because it could be that they might need to go to the ER. So that'd be a short thing. Now, put a little levy in, you know, kind of life, you know. Now, maintenance of effort. This is a big issue with county committees. I propose that we just take it and talk to the state about this. I mean, this is good, serious business. To just tell them to take all this 2-point-some million off of all the commissioners. And then let's look at fund balance where we got multi-millions and tell them to go to the biggest county, figure out how much money it takes to operate that county for the things that's not being provided by the LME, and then fund all the counties at that level each year out of the fund balance and see what they have to say. Because in that way, they've already got the tax money here already. They don't have to raise taxes, they already got it. I think it's a serious thing, but at the same time, sometimes you have to laugh about it because of how they make such a big deal out of something. So just, you commissioners, have a life at a bigger level.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on our CEO, Brian Ingram, to introduce special new staff member.
One of the, I think, very important responsibilities I have is to really understand as an organization the human resources we need, the skill level, the people we need to do what we're doing, you know, now and into the future. And you just, for those of you that have been part of this for a while, you know, the degree of change that we've experienced in, you know, 5 years, let's say, has been unprecedented. You know, the simple way to think about this is how, you know, at one point, you know, we had doubled our size twice in about a year and a half, and have a budget now that is around, I guess, $370 million, and you know, was probably 40 million or something before that. The needs that we have as an organization have obviously changed dramatically with that type of growth, and with the kinds of thinking and orientations that we have to have, which are much more, I'm going to say, business related. And that in no way is contrary to our public mission. You can certainly have a public mission and apply strong business principles and a business mind to that public mission. I think that's the best way to describe the evolution for Smoky. So the fact that we have created a position that is Chief Business and Marketing Officer, you would say, well, what the heck do we need that for? Well, you know, a couple of years ago, you know, we asked ourselves, well, why do we need a general counsel? Now, an indispensable person who is our general counsel. I'm not even sure how many attorneys we have actually now, really, okay? So it's part of the evolution. It's part of the evolution. And it is part of an acknowledgement that at an executive level, we need a different skill set. You know, we don't need people, you know, my desire is not to have everybody be the same. It really isn't. You know, the more different skill sets we can combine, that's what you try to do. You know, it's not about everybody agreeing and all of that. It's about, you know, the complementary skill set and personalities and kind of all that goes into that. So, all that being said, you know, I've known Steve for a couple of years casually from his previous employment at Cardinal, where he was a chief administrative officer. And, you know, folks have read about Cardinal in the news and know that there are folks that have chosen different paths. And when I began to hear that he might be one of those individuals, we started a conversation that led to his interest in coming to Smoky, which we're very fortunate to have him here. You know, his background is different from you know, pretty much all of us here, in that the majority of his time was spent in financial industry. He's worked internationally, worked for commercial managed care and health care. So he really comes at this with a, you know, again, a very different set of skills and interests. So he's already made his mark. He will be overseeing provider network and public relations, the kind of public affairs area that Shelley's involved with. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Steve Timmons.
And thank you. I won't say much. I just hope I live up to what Tracy's expectations. And no, I do think, and I sincerely mean this, I do believe that Smoky is probably, out of all of the MCOs, and what I do know about the MCOs, and including on the private side, as far as Dive Options, that's the other healthcare organization I work with, is is in a very good position to do things that others don't have the opportunity to do. Some of it is geographic location, some of it is the relationships that it has with the hospitals in the area as well. Some of the other MCOs don't have that opportunity because they're in areas where there's multiple hospitals, and as you might know, many hospitals don't really get along with each other so well. So it's hard to get them to fly in the same direction to achieve the results that you want. So I hope to meet all of you soon, one-on-one personally, and for you to get to know me, and I'll get to know what your aspirations are from us. And thank you.
Welcome, Steve.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is the review and approval of the agenda and the prior meeting minutes from June 25th. Is there a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes from June 25th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion, any corrections, anything? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call on Richie Tannerhill, the bench point.
All right, how's everybody doing?
Doing good.
Doing good? I want to throw out a couple of disclaimers. Is this a good spot for me to stand?
Go right to the head of the class, buddy.
The head of the class. All right. The first one is I'm probably going to get excited up here. And I'm, talking about something today that is really exciting to me. The second disclaimer is after this presentation, I'm going to have to leave. I have a son who's in the 8th grade, and he's starting running back for Waynesville Middle School, and he's playing his first game today. So it started at 4:30. So after this presentation, myself and I think my team lead is going to step out. So I apologize for that. But yeah, so Brian was talking about an evolution, and that is exactly what we are talking about, an evolution. And this evolution is not going to be televised because this evolution is live. You actually have a copy of this flyer in your packet, and it's pertaining to the recovery rally. This is the inaugural Western Regional Recovery Rally. It's going to be happening at Lake Junaluska on September 19th in celebration of Recovery Month. September is National Recovery Month. It's also been a proclamation signed by our governor in the state of North Carolina as Recovery Month in the state of North Carolina also. And in attendance at this day is going to be some local mayors, some law enforcement, and we are actually, our local mayor in Headwood County is writing a proclamation proclaiming September as Recovery Month in the town of Waynesville also. So if you know other mayors in your local community, they can do this. I have a template, shoot me an email. If they want a template, how they can do a proclamation proclaiming Recovery Month in their town, in their community, we can do that also. And this is what it is. We're talking about building the community. This is the part of the evolution. What many folks don't understand is that is where real recovery happens. We think it happens at inpatient treatment or a hospital or a jail or a church, and all those things are great. We need those type of supports, but that's just what that is. And maybe where recovery starts, but real recovery happens in the community. And it's very important to me because recovery has done more than change my life. And in fact, it's given me a life. It's given me a life full of hope. It's given me a life full of purpose. And it's not only affected my life, it's affected the life of my family because my family now has stability in their life. They now have hope for the future. And it affects the community because I'm now able to give back in that community. And so what we're trying to do is rally the community that recovery does happen. And in fact, it's not the exception. We have much data that says that most people do go on to achieve recovery. And you know what? It's very unique. There are some rallies happening throughout our state. There's some rallies happening throughout the country, but they're labeled. It's an addiction-specific rally or it's a mental health-specific rally. And we want to honor folks in recovery from mental health. We want to honor folks in recovery from addictions as well, but we also want to honor folks in recovery from life. You know, one of the many things that I've learned since being in recovery myself for more than 9 years is everyone's in recovery from something. Hey, let's face it, we've all at least had a bad 5 minutes, right? I mean, I'm in recovery from poison oak right now, so we've all had something, right? But we are uniting the community around this. And being that people recover in the community, everyone's invited. Everyone plays a part. For whether it's somebody that provides services, whether it's somebody that receives services. And this year, what we really want to highlight outside of the folks that are in recovery, and we want to honor the folks that haven't yet found recovery, but we really want to honor our allies, our recovery allies. And a recovery ally can be an individual, it can be an agency, it can be an employer, it can be a business, anyone that supports recovery. We know that we can't do it alone, and we need our allies at the table. So, some of the things that are going to be happening that day is we're going to be doing a recovery walk. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Lake Junaluska, but it's a beautiful place. And when you have 5 people take a step, for a purpose, it makes an impact. But when you have 1,000 or 1,200 people take a step for that same purpose, it's powerful. And so what we're going to do is we're going to walk around the lake just to raise awareness for recovery. We're not asking that everyone finish. Our goal is that everyone takes one step. This is going to be publicized in the media. We got the media involved to help us support this rally. And I can't even tell you how amazing it is to work at an agency that I'm so supported, from the leadership down, from our CEO to my team lead over there. The support has just been phenomenal. And not just for the rally, but my whole recovery journey since I started here 3.5 years ago. You all rock. You absolutely rock, and you impacted my life in a profound way, in the lives of many others. The other things that we're going to be doing is we're going to actually be passing out awards for the Recovery Champion of the Year. We've sent out nomination forms to all of our 23 counties because it's not specific to Haywood County. It is happening in Haywood County, but this is a regional rally. We have folks from all of our counties coming. We even have folks from the state coming. Courtney Cantrell, I don't know if any of y'all ever heard of her or not, but she's committed to come. She's going to be one of our speakers that day, as well as Flo Stein. We got some folks from the Behavioral Health Resource Program at Chapel Hill, the head of the Peer Support Program. They're going to come. They're going to present that day. And anyway, so we're giving out 6 Recovery Champion Awards that day. And a Recovery Champion can be an individual like myself, a person that's in long-term recovery, or it can be an ally as a Recovery Champion. We know we have many folks that aren't on a personal recovery journey, but they support that. And so we're going to honor our allies. It's really powerful to have our local law enforcement involved. When our sheriff stands up that day and says, "My name is Greg Christopher, I'm the sheriff of Haywood County, but I'm also a recovery ally." That goes a long way to help us combat the stigma, the us and them mentality. Our chief of police, Bill Hollings, said the same way. And when we have people there, we're going to be giving away free food. We've got our local fire department involved. They're going to bring their big fire truck and their big pull-behind grill. We're giving out free hot dogs and hamburgers that have been provided from the community to support. And when we have our local law enforcement in plain clothes that are cooking hot dogs and passing out hot dogs that day, that's going to go, again, a long way to help us combat that stigma. It's a safe, family-friendly, safe environment. We're going to have bouncy houses for kids. We're going to have face painting, balloon artists. Again, this lets people know that it's a safe environment. And again, helps us combat the stigma that says people in recovery are dangerous. We're going to have opportunities for all of our provider agencies or any community agency. It doesn't even have to be specific to the mental health system or the behavioral health system. Setting up a resource table to provide resource information for what they do in the community. We got some employers that are setting up to do on-site job applications. We know that employment is the #1 contributing factor to successful sustained recovery. How huge is that? We've, so we got a couple of employers that have signed up to do that. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity. The vision behind this rally is that it's a floating rally. So it does happen to be happening in Haywood County, this first one, but we're hoping that champions from other counties rise up and that we can already begin to plan, even in October, to where this rally is going to happen next year. And as it continues to change from county to county to county and gains momentum, it's going to make a difference in a lot of people's lives. So I hope to see you all there. I'm going to be there. I hope that many of you all will be there. It's going to be a historical event. So I would like to answer any questions that anybody has. That's just a snippet. I mean, I can keep going.
Is this going to be an annual event, you think, Richie?
Yes, sir, absolutely. We're already planning it to be an annual event. I know that we have a lot of champions that have rose up there in Haywood County. We've created some wonderful allies there and partnerships there, but we're hoping that we can float it. And the only way that that's going to be successful and sustained is when those champions from other communities rise up and say, you know what, we can do that here. We can make that happen here too. And not that it dies out in Haywood County, but those champions travel to Buncombe or to Alexander or to Mitchell or Yancey or wherever it's at. And as we continue to grow, and the way that grows is when everybody's on the same page, when we're using common language, when everybody's supporting that. I mean, no one is not invited You know, I've been proud that we've got flyers at DSS. DSS is at the table. You know, we've got flyers at the local gym. We've got flyers at the local restaurant. My vision is you could drive down Russ Avenue in Haywood County or any other county during the month of September and you see Ingalls supports Recovery Month, Hardee's Recovery Allies, Meridian, Appalachian supports Recovery Month. Whoever it is out there, we all have the opportunity to make a positive difference in the communities that we live in. And recovery is no different. Recovery is no different. You know, there are people that are walking around us every single day that we would not even have a clue that it was successful sustained recovery. But they don't want to share their story because of the stigma that goes along with that. When most people get well, what happens is they step out of the picture like, I'm good with that. You know, I'm done. I don't want to have that label anymore. So anytime that we can do without using a label, the better off we are. I will use my I have a dream speech because I do. And in that dream, we see people as people. That's what this rally's about. So champions, rise up. Bring somebody with you. Bring your niece, your nephew, your double, second, third cousin, your dog. It's pet friendly. Bring them. Help us make a difference.
So are you going to pass the plate now?
Am I going to pass the plate? Yeah. I'll pass the plate. Are you ready?
I think you'd make a great fundraiser.
Well,
Great presentation.
you know, support is a key concept of recovery, and I feel so supported here, and it's from our leadership from the top down. So I appreciate the board. I appreciate y'all letting me work here at Smoky. It's changed my life in a phenomenal way. So
Well,
thank you.
I like the aspect of taking on the stigma. There are a lot of ways we can overcome the
That's right.
stigma. And any way, this sounds like a good way to help to
That's right.
make people realize they're in your community and it's people you know.
Absolutely.
And
Yes, sir. And it's everybody working together. You know, it's huge to have our law enforcement at the table, our agency provider leaders, the older lady walking down the road that don't have a clue but just wants to help. She can be a recovery ally too. Everyone has a place at the table, and that's where the change is really going to happen.
I love your enthusiasm.
Put me in the game, coach. I'm fired up.
we got you in the game.
All right. Now I'm going to slip out of here if there's no more questions and go see my son play his football game. I appreciate y'all so much, and thank you for the opportunity to come present that. I will see you there, right?
All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Do I need to pass the sign-up sheet, or was verbal commitment good?
We're all in.
All right. I'll win.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy that.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Next item on the agenda is Pat McGinnis, our CPAC chair, giving us the Consumer and Family Advisory Committee report.
Well, first I want to say that I hope everybody does make it to the recovery rally.
Green now?
I hope everybody does make it to the recovery rally. I'm kind of torn. I'm supposed to be at the beach that weekend. I'm trying to figure out if I can come back a day early or not so that I can make it. So, I was talking to Richie before this meeting, and we were talking about 10 or 15 years ago, when you talk about recovery or peer support or any of consumers thinking and doing for themselves, people would get a hold of your materials if you found out anything about it and shred them. LME MCO or area program staff would cross the street to keep from walking down the same sidewalk with consumers. So we've come so far, and we still got a long way to go, but I'm really proud to be part of Smoky too, and Richie's really hard to follow, but we have come so far. So we held our local meetings in August, each individual region. We received information about the proposal of case support waiver and voted to endorse this. Members also received an update on the C3 at 356 project and the inaugural Western Regional Recovery Rally, which Richie just got done telling us about. We were also notified of the steering committee's recommendation, and I want to thank probably one of the people is Jerry Rice. He talked to this board recently about the folks at McDonald's not making enough money or the underpaid folks. So went home and thought about it and made some recommendations. So for the first time in many, many years, our CFAC is going to see a stipend increase, and we're volunteers, and our stipend has been $25 ever since we've been getting a stipend. And I realized on one of the calls, I sit on
the state to local CFAP conference calls, and our stipend was the second lowest in the state. So we may not be the highest, but we're going to be right up there close with them if we're not. But our CFAP members are getting a raise in their stipend. So we do pay attention, Jerry, to what you say and other folks, and you know, that might have been part of what got me to thinking about it. And of course, people will be able to, if they don't want to accept it, they'll be able to turn it down, and some will. But you know, there are others that really need it, and we hope this will help with retention of good quality CFAC members, and it's already actually helped with one that we had that we were losing in the central region has decided to stay. That was a parent of an IDD, or the grandparent, but he resides with them. And so we hope it makes a positive difference, not only in retention, but in, you know, getting other members to come and join. So we also hear reports from our representatives on the Provider Council, the Human Rights Committee, Clinical Advisory and Innovation Stakeholder Committees, and other committees. During the August meetings, all of our groups provided input for the CFAC retreat, which is going to also be held at Lake Junaluska, and it will be on September the 11th and 12th. And during the group, this retreat, the group will hear a presentation on integrated care by Pete, is it right, Rivers?
Reeves.
Discuss the issues and resources for children, and hear an overview of community education efforts led by Smokey, which I've been talking to other folks from different LME MCOs, and really we are at the top when it comes to them offering educational opportunities for the community and for CFAC and for the board members, and we're so grateful for that. Also, our steering committee will meet on September the 11th while we're there. That will be the first meeting that we have, and it'll be immediately before the retreat, and then our local meetings will resume in October. So a lot going on. Any of you'd like to come to our CFAC retreat, let somebody know, let Brian Shuping or somebody know. You're welcome to come spend some time with us there too. I've always invited the board members in the past. We're looking forward to that, but I really think the real important action is going to be happening the following weekend. I just think that's just tremendous opportunity, so thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Next item on the agenda, Provider Advisory Council report, consumption.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First thing I'd like to do is amend an objection I gave to you several months ago, and that was having to follow Pat. Now I have to follow Richie and Pat. It just doesn't seem right. I'll take my licks for the board. No, just kidding about that. But Richie and Pat all did a great job. Pat, you always do.
I think Richie's amazing. He's in the right job, isn't he?
There is no question about that. From the provider standpoint, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago and are working diligently on membership, participation, and non-providers that want to be a part of the network. As Smokey is evolving more into a business MCO with multiple partners, those partners are wanting to be, some of them, if not a lot of them, want to be a part of the provider network. So that is something we're going to address at our retreat in October. So there's some real good discussion about that, and we're seeing some really positive recommendations and collaboration with community partners that we've never seen before. So it's a good thing, and I think it speaks to the impact Smokey is making in the community as a whole, the integration versus just very targeted folks. So wanted to point that out. The other piece that we've been reviewing are some just our bylaws, some policies and procedures. There was some discussion around services, and we're doing a good job of working with Smokey, or Smokey's doing a great job of working with us around increasing access to care issues, especially in the B3 services. There was a lot of good news that came out in that particular meeting about those services, so that's another huge plus. Probably the other notable pieces, Sean and Tommy are working with us to beef up some of the organizational electronic components to help us be more efficient as a volunteer organization. and we're hoping that that's really going to increase the participation of folks that we really need to be at the table. So all in all, things seem to be going really well in a lot of ways and moving in the right direction. Aside, any questions from the provider council standpoint? Aside from that, I'd just like to make a comment as a board member, a non-voting board member, but to hear Steve talk about today choosing to come to Smoky because there's opportunity for good, common sense change for people, that's a great thing to hear. I just want to say I've heard at least 2 other Smoky employees that recently chose to come to Smoky say the same thing. And I think that speaks a lot to the mission of Smoky if they're having people seek out this organization to come work for versus other organizations. So I just wanted to say that as well.
I think that's a good point, Duncan, it's not just providing the services, but we have to have the right people in place. And people, as the job market heats up again, finally, we need to get the good people in here. And I appreciate the staff for doing such a good job, continually bringing people in and people wanting to work here. That's what really makes it. When they want to work at a job, they're going to do a better job regardless of their qualifications. So, welcome, Steve.
Brian, did Richard give a presentation when he first came to Smoky?
Yeah.
Yes. I was thinking
Right
he
before
did.
Christmas.
He did a great job.
Not a dry eye in the house myself included. Quite a story about his life.
Thank you for the report, Duncan. Our next agenda item, Vicki, can you hear us? County Commissioner Advisory Report, Vicki Green.
I can hear you, but if Bill Kennedy's there, he's going to give the report. Bill, you there?
Yeah, I'll be glad to do that, Vicki. It's a little easier maybe for them to hear me than you, but feel free to chime in and, and correct me if I drift.
Okay, I can hear you.
Good. Well, good to see y'all. We had a County Commission Advisory Board meeting Tuesday night. Had a pretty good attendance. We began with a legislative update. Brian told us about concerning legislative happenings, and hopefully we'll see in the next 2 weeks what Medicaid will do and what the state will do as well. So members were requested to contact Brian if they're not receiving that you can use the news you can use, which highlights and comes out and has some real good summaries over the past few months about what's going on with the potential litigation and other issues that are that need to be kind of clarified for people in the public to understand what's going on. We had a report of the Board of Directors Performance and Quality Committee. I guess that was me. We've reviewed the last meeting we reviewed the annual report, and there was some interest in the access to care, and we're still looking at that. We looked at that again today, and I'll mention that in a second of my Performance and Quality Committee report. Board members felt that a quarterly snapshot that focuses on access to services, quality of care, and availability of services should be captured. Additionally, any yearly plans presented to the Smokies Performance and Quality Committee will be shared. And we are looking at quantifying that data as much as we can in the Performance and Quality Report, and it's an ongoing process. We got a report about the C3 at 356 Comprehensive Care Center, the Neil Dobbins Center, the Caldwell Facility Based Crisis Center, which is an existing facilities that provide comprehensive crisis care. Commissioners had questions regarding the legal ability to transport involuntary commitment consumers to centers further than the local emergency departments. And Tracy will review that and get back with us as we find that out. What they're talking about was, as we have these centers that are, a lot of deputies sit on IVC consumers in the hospitals, and this new facility, when it gets up to fully running, will have a place that they can drop them off and not have to sit with them for days on end sometime. One of the managers from Graham County figured they spend about $90,000 a year transporting and sitting on consumers, so mental health consumers. So this is something that we need to look at, and it's a rural issue a lot, and how we can get these services centers close enough to people to be able to access them. Shelley Foreman, liaison to the County Commissioner Advisory Board, will provide members with a map of the regional inpatient units, family facility-based crisis centers, and other crisis response facilities. And I think at the same time, we were talking about some of the commissioners that hadn't been on that advisory board long weren't really familiar with the services, the providers in their county. So I think we were going to work on a list to have a good, easy to reference list of all the providers that serve in each county, so that each county commissioner can know where to go and what services they provided there. There was a discussion on the status of county maintenance of effort allocations. Fred Neardy, Smoky CFO, reported on the status of county allocation confirmations and noted that 2 counties he had not yet received a written confirmation. He also said that he didn't mind shaving them into paying. So it's all a question of how we get this money in. Mr. Brian Ingram reminded the group that this financial report was presented several meetings ago, and the last meeting's introduction to each county's comprehensive care center, which receives the vast majority of county and state funds for care to and underinsured residents. And the people in the county that I know that have been paying attention to this realize that we're getting a lot more service than the money we're putting in as our $2 or $3 million of the $370 million Smoky budget. So, but there is always a push at the county level to redirect money, and but I feel comfortable with it. It was a little odd the way it was set up, but hopefully we can work that out in the meantime. Hopefully the counties just keep paying what is really a small part of their mental health expenditures in their county. Network management and provider contracting. Smoky staff reported on the key responsibilities and mandates the organization has in managing the network of providers. This management focuses on ensuring adequate services are available to meet needs, promoting the most cost-effective system of care, and ensuring the long-term stability of the network. And Sean Jones, there he is, hey Sean, did a really good job of explaining that and talking about it and clarifying for some of the county commissioners that were new on the committee how the process for transitioning care from one provider to another when Smoky decided to discontinue contracting with a provider for a particular service to maximize efficiency. Members were referred once again to the most recent issue of News You Can Use, which describes many of the aspects related to contracting for services, including the legal authority, policy, and procedures which guide the process. And I remember that we were pointing out that some of the commissioners were afraid they were losing services. Smoky's looking to increase services and looking at how to do that within the money we've got. And as we know from Tracy, that it is spelled out pretty clearly that that is one of the responsibilities of Smoky, to choose and provide what providers and make sure the coverage is there for everybody. The other business, Steve Smith from Henderson County Health Director requested information on how this advisory board reports back to the Smoky Board of Directors, and Ms. Green noted she provides a monthly report at each Smoky Board of Directors meeting. We've got a few recommendations from the County Commission's Advisory Board. We did reach out to them and gave them a list of different, we gave a list of my meeting topics that the performance and quality will take on different subjects each month. And we'll develop a quarterly report from the Performance and Quality Committee targeting key access to care indicators. We'll continue to offer information to the Community County Commission Advisory Board to reflect access to care for and underinsured in comprehensive care centers and crisis services. Offer ongoing information on county-related provider service issues that relate to provider contract issues, and develop a more structured process for offering insights or recommendations from the County Commission Advisory Board to the Board of Directors. So I thought the meeting went pretty well, and Sean was really good about answering some of the questions, and the other staff was, that the commissioners had. So I feel pretty good about that, and having been on that before I was back on the board, it's good to see that input. The more we can get, in my opinion, each county involved in the mental health process, the better we'll all be. And that's my report, or speaker's report.
I couldn't have done it any better, Billy.
I don't know about that, but thank you, Vicki.
Thank you, Billy.
Let me tell you all why I'm up there today. One of my favorite excuses for years has been I've got car trouble making myself get in my car, and so that finally caught up with me. I'm having car trouble for real. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next agenda item, Performance and Quality Committee Report. Again, call on Billy Kennedy.
All right, well, we just had this meeting right before, so I won't have quite as laid out report from the meeting, but it is fresh on my mind, and Pat, hopefully if I miss something, you'll feel free to chime in, and or Michael too, they were both there, and Duncan too. So we did review today, last meeting reviewed the annual report, our procedures. This time, today, we reviewed the monthly reports for the Performance and Improvement Grid, the monthly DHHS reports, and I'll read a few things from the executive summary. We did the July data, trends and slides, and we've got a May LME MCO comparison, which Smokey really comes out looking well on top. We've got a lot of areas that we're doing really well in, especially in the high penetration rate, which we have more than any of the others, which may skew some of our numbers because we are reaching people. And so some complaints maybe in our area, some access to care numbers that are a little lower than we'd like, but we think that may have something to do with the penetration rate, and but they're looking into that, and Julie's going to come back to us with more information on that. We did our quarterly report for the grievance and complaints, incident reporting, and access to care. And let me just go over the executive summary pretty quick here. I don't need to read the whole thing. I guess people will have this if they can find. Okay. So, it's a monthly monitoring report on approximately 80 key operating measures, and it's submitted the 20th of every month. We get some of the data back, so some of it's delayed by a month or two because we report it to the state, and then it comes back to us. And so there's sometimes a little time delay in some of the reports. For the 11th consecutive month, Smoky met or exceeded state's performance standards on all measures for the reporting month. For an annual trend, level 2 incident reports are trending up, and level 3 incident reports are trending slightly down. And these are DMA and DMH combined. And we're looking into that. We're not quite sure. Like I said, it might be something to do with that high penetration rate. We didn't really get an answer for a while. That was the access to care issue was changing. Did we brought it up and we looked at it, but we need more information to find out. Increased number of service. Some of the in the report, some maybe related to several factors. Increased number of consumers receiving services, increased routine monitoring, which checks for appropriate incident reporting, and increased education and outreach efforts to providers related to the importance of incident reporting. So downward trend of level 3 incident reports is slight. Most members receiving MHBD and SA services is trending slightly up. The rate of ED admits was stable, and then the percentage of ED admissions that were readmits in 30 days was stable as well. The rate of admissions to community site inpatient is trending slightly down. We're hoping that some of those ED admissions will be when we get the new C3 356 open, we'll take care of help take some of that cost out of the emergency room and get it into make it so that they're getting treatment where it's best provided. We've got since August 2014, Smoky Mountain has provided services to approximately 15,000 Medicaid members a month, which is a penetration rate of approximately 9.5% of Medicaid. And both measures show slight variability between very narrow ranges, but that's looking really good for us. And that's encouraging that we're reaching so many people, because like we talked about, student loan, how do you get people to access services and then provide them long enough care, enough service so that they can get their needs fulfilled. There was some question as to online referrals, maybe not showing up on, we were wondering if some people that didn't have phones but had online, so we're going to find out if those referrals might be changing our call referral and access to care numbers. So all that relates to the access to care, and so we need more information to look into that again. Since August 2014, Smoky Mountain has provided services to approximately 4,900 uninsured consumers per month. That translates to a penetration rate of approximately 3.5% of the uninsured. Both measures show variability between very narrow ranges. And that range varies from 4,400 to 5,200 per month. And the monthly penetration rate varies between 3.3 and 3.8. But both those are good, and of course that's money that we have to, services we have to provide without being reimbursed too. So that's all part of the big Smoky financial picture. But the last thing that I want to say is that we had our URAC site review on Smoky Mountain facilities, and there were no questions, 100% success report, accreditation given, and it's very unusual for them to find nothing wrong. So congratulations to all those that were involved in that process, and it makes me proud to be a Smoky board member to know that we're doing the right things, and we're always looking for ways to improve other parts too, and places that we're not getting where we need to be. Congratulations, and thank you all for all the hard work.
Thank you, Billy.
Performance plot report.
Thank you. This past weekend, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners held their annual meeting in Pitt County. And as part of that, President Ronnie Beal, wanted us to put more emphasis on mental health and mental health reform in some of the programs. And so there were several sessions on mental health. Our own Jeannie Pugh reported that, did an excellent job. One session was about what's called the President's Mental Health Engagement Task Force recommendations, and I have copies for everyone. If Jules, you pass those out for everyone. And the NCACC board adopted these. So this will be an ongoing task force from the association, which is a very, very important part of the business of the county. So I just want to make you aware of that. And
Rick, I did forget, were there any of the performance and quality board members, committee members that wanted to add something? Michael? Okay.
The only thing, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Smoky's penetration rate for the uninsured the highest of any MCO in the state?
Yes. I was looking for that graph too. That was the one that really showed up, that we're really taking care of uninsured people, and that speaks to how we're trying to make those numbers work with that high of unpaid consumers.
So they got the right values. It says we have the right values.
Right.
our next, I just want everybody to have a copy of that report. Next item on the agenda is a report from our CEO, Brian.
We'll be saving time on my report, because we do have some very important things to cover, in particular, the gaps analysis report that we have coming up here. So let me just go kind of quickly. Legislative update. The way I describe this in executive committee is the first thing to crew around here that, covers the bases when I'm gone, and I've been gone a lot lately. I think all you have to do is read the paper to know there's been a lot of very heated discussion and negotiation around Medicaid reform and the state budget. So, I have been working as closely as possible with leadership in both the House and the Senate to, I think, largely educate them on the implications of particular policy directions and hopefully try to prevent inadvertent actions from occurring that would be damaging to the system. It's easy to go there and talk about, taking care of yourself, and I really try to not do that, but take a little different perspective. That being said, I think folks, if you've been following things, know that there was a major change in the position of the House as a result of their internal discussions in caucus that amounted to them agreeing to a position with the Senate around the participation of commercial managed care organizations in whatever happens with Medicaid reform. And that's a very big pivot from where they were, which was really committed to seeing a public response to the need for reform and capitation on the health care side for Medicaid. So with that alignment, that can let things go much more quickly. Not that all of this is figured out, and it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, where dealing with the budget provides numbers that have to be in some cases backed into in relationship to Medicaid reform, but yet there's such big numbers that they kind of drive the budget. So it's a little bit of a teeter-totter on which gets done first and how this kind of all works out. And it is, boy, this is big stuff. The policy decisions that are being made, and I think will be made in the very near future, as early as the next couple of weeks around Medicaid, will affect what we do for a long time to come. It's that seismic. So it's important, I guess, for me to exert as much influence as I can over that policy. I've been working hard on that. One aspect has had to do with use of fund balance and whether or not there will be a reduction in state funding that the General Assembly would make that would essentially either require or provide an opportunity for us to choose to make up for that reduction with fund balance. And this becomes complicated very quickly around the legality of the use of Medicaid funds in our fund balance versus state funds. And I don't think the jury has come in on that yet, but I think it's safe to say that a line in the sand that we're very interested in drawing is around the protection of the Medicaid funds in our fund balance. And there's a lot of reason to believe that. We'll see how that pans out. Other than that, I did want to touch on information about the crisis center.
Before you, can I ask one question?
Sure.
I meant to ask in the executive session, has anyone from the County Commissioners Association been at the table in any of these discussions? And the reason I ask you, it seems that they could be a pretty strong advocate when it comes to the taking of fund balance, because, once you go down that slippery slope, then it's, we're a constituent, counties are a constituent unit of state government, and it'd be, real easy for them to just suddenly say, well, the counties are sitting on these fund balances, let's take that, or some other kind of money grab there. Seem that they might be a good advocate for us in that process.
Well, so much of this has been in the discussion stage, and oftentimes
more one-on-one than.
And, you know, with the door closed and sometimes more open, and you read the media reports about that. One thing that will change, and in fact, this morning we did release some draft language around the aspects of Medicaid reform legislation that is currently the work in progress that would define how we would like to see things be. You know, as the discussions take the form of refinements in that bill, then it'll be a better opportunity for people to weigh in on that. And, you know, the thing about that is, once that kind of comes around, that's going to happen quickly. It's going to happen very quickly. So folks will have to be ready, but you make a very good point. There's many constituencies that should be very interested in how this is going to work out for all kinds of reasons. The provider community, Duncan, consumers, advocacy. I mean, you know, we're changing the healthcare landscape for North Carolina for the foreseeable future in this session. So it's not to be taken lightly.
It's good to have Ronnie there. I think he brings it up that it wasn't really brought up as much before.
So, and if there aren't any questions, I'll just keep right on rolling here. We did have a slideshow, and my apologies to the staff that worked to put that together around initiatives both with C3 at 356 and the Caldwell Facility-Based Crisis Program. Two excellent summaries in your packet that I would refer you to, and we'd like, you know, it's always good to get the good news in there too, right? You know, we're tremendously proud of the effort with C3 at 356. And Jerry, you make a very good point, and I am most always very careful to talk about the need to reduce unnecessary trips to the emergency department. And I think you caught me slipping up the other night. Certainly we don't want folks who have a medical need or a crisis at the level of needing that level of medical attention to go anywhere other than the emergency department. But what we know is that that is very much overused and misused. So this is state of the art. I don't know that there will be anything like this elsewhere in the state, and we should be tremendously proud. The status, as you may know, is that one aspect of that program is open now, and that's the outpatient center on the main floor, the ground level floor. And if you went in that building, you wouldn't recognize it from when we were there. I'll just put it that way. Really just a remarkable change in color, presentation, ambiance, everything. It's a great thing they've got going there. And of course, the downstairs, which will include the facility-based crisis program, you know, is a much bigger construction project because it requires sprinkling and a lot of more significant modifications. For Caldwell County, we couldn't do this without the Foothills Foundation. You know, we had a grant, and we've talked about this. Foothills came through and has provided assistance with that. Sean has been leading our effort with that, and Jenny deserves a tremendous amount of credit for the C3 effort. I think the stage we're at now is a little bit of misalignment between the actual budget and where the construction estimates came in, but Sean is hopeful that those things can kind of come into line with perhaps some different choices and discussions. And, for that part of our catchment area, just a tremendous need. And again, following the design of the Comprehensive Care Center and what we're doing here in Buncombe, this will be glommed down, if you will, to an outpatient treatment center that RHA is currently in. So again, we'll have the continuity of care with a wide spectrum of treatment services. And what we don't want to lose is the added bonus of the kids program. You know, when we flip at 356 the beds from Neil Dobbins It gives us another facility to develop a youth facility, essentially a youth facility-based crisis program. County has been just a fantastic partner, as Mission Health, and you see the list of folks that have really pitched in on this, but when you put money on the table, that's extra special. What a great graph. The day when the lines cross is a great thing, when there are more diversions and presentations at the ED. And, this has been the result of a lot of work. Everything from, the design of the comprehensive care center. And quite honestly, that runs us into trouble because doing things like that results in saying no to some providers. And we make very fundamental and discernible decisions that drive these kinds of things. But you see the results here. And I think I'm going to stop there unless there are any questions and let these folks get started with the gaps analysis, which is a very important part of what we do. And just do kind of a brief introduction. Understanding the needs in the community. I'm sorry, Nancy.
That's okay. I wanted the board to know that I've been on this committee for getting this 356 up and running from the start. Very supportive of it. But I guess what I would like to get for the board to hear that Brian is not, he doesn't brag about it, but I do want this board to know. I sat at the table and we talked about the mental health, substance abuse, and they made the mistake of asking me about the IDD community. Well, my response to them was, I don't trust a damn one of you sitting here at this table, and I'm not going to bring my son here. Because you haven't convinced me that you know how to take care of the IDD community. You'll do a beautiful job with the MI, and you'll do a beautiful job with the SA. You bring me back a committee, you bring me back the information, and you convince me that you'll take care of my son if I bring him in here, then I'll support it, I'll take it out in the community, and I'll spread the word. I went to the last meeting, I sat and I listened, I heard, they brought me what I asked, and I walked away from there telling them, I now will support you 100%. I will bring Jerry to the facility if I had to do it. So they heard me, and they put the work into putting together a committee and convinced me now they know how to handle an IDD, because they can't bring an IDD client into there and handle them like they would an MI or an SA, because it wouldn't work. Jerry Donald would run out of there and be terrified. There'd be no way that they could help him. But putting together now a place that they can bring Jerry in, they can have music, they can have toys, they can have this and they can have that. Now they can handle the IDD community. So I want this board to know that Smokey heard me. They knew I was very sincere about it, and I would not support the IDD until they convinced me they could handle my son, and they did that. So I'm very proud of Brian, Christina, and all of them there. They heard me, they listened, and they brought me back what I asked for. So I'm very proud of them.
That's what you should expect, and I appreciate your efforts and confidence.
And I just want to chime in from the Performance and Quality Committee that IDD services are something we're looking at too, and not, and we were looking at, we're not sure, Smokey's done a lot of different types of solutions, so we're not sure which one's paying off, but they're one of them, some of them are working and they're working great, so, we can't quantify exactly which part is doing what, but we're going in the right direction.
Thank you. So, understanding the needs that exist in the community is just foundational to what we do, because at the core of all of this is about meeting needs of individuals in the community, both individuals that have Medicaid and those that do not. So quantifying, characterizing, understanding the environment that is responsible for need and service delivery, is very, very, very important to us. And we're never going to be good enough at it. It's painting a battleship. We get done with it and we just need to start again and do it better. And that's really just consistent with sort of our level of maturity as an organization. So you're getting a snapshot here tonight. It's something we'll talk about a lot, and we need to talk a lot about it. We'll talk about the relationship between our network development plan and this needs assessment. This is the core of what we do and have to be good at. So please give your attention to these gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to make this as brief as possible, but there's a lot of depth to this presentation. So if you have any questions, we want to have that opportunity for you to ask questions. But just so you know, this is a 217-page document, so we're not going to go through the whole thing. So we prepared some slides for you. So I'm Sean Jones. I'm the Senior Director of Provider Network. And this is Tommy Duncan. He's the Business Process Manager in Provider Network. And Tommy was, in essence, our project manager and helped put this report together. And this report is required by the state, but this is a cross-functional team that we put together to put together this report. So every single department in Smoky Mountain had input into developing the gaps analysis, or the gap analysis. And it was a real pleasure working with everyone. And this is a big job. And if you remember last year, we had a vendor that did a large component of this, and we used that vendor to produce the maps and some of the charts and to do some of the data. But the level of just being able to pull the data out of our systems and do the analysis and provide it to the vendor and then get the information back and be able to include this in the report, it's a really monumental task on Smoky's part. And this is really very important for the future of where our network is going and our overall strategy and for the consumers. Within our catchment area, really to be able to identify any gaps that we have, but also to identify what the future needs are going to be in the network, just not what the present needs are. So I hope you sense that as we go through this analysis. So Tom, do you want to tell us a little bit about the requirements of this document?
So I want to say this one time out loud. We're talking about the 2015 Provider Capacity Community Needs Assessment Gap Analysis. So you're going to hear us say gap analysis a lot because I'm not going through that every time.
And you do have a copy of the executive summary in your packet today.
So the gap analysis is actually an annual requirement of our contracts, both with DMA and DMH. Although it's called the 2015 gap analysis, it actually covers the period of July 2013 to June 2014. And it's always due in April of the following year. This year there were 6 required sections: the executive summary, which you have in your packets, demographics, access and choice, needs identified by community stakeholders, our analysis, and our priorities and strategies for the next year. We also had to address 3 DHHS initiatives, and those were the Transitions to Community Living Initiative, Crisis Solutions Initiative, and the integration of physical and behavioral health care. And we were given a choice of several other issues we could address and initiatives we could address. We chose to talk about the full service continuum for children and adolescents and recovery-oriented care for persons with substance abuse disorders.
So one of the requirements in the analysis was to produce these geo-access maps, and we're not going to go through all these individual maps, so don't worry. But I wanted to give you a sample of what they look like. And you can imagine there are access standards, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, but we produce 49 of these maps for a lot of our different services. So the yellow dots represent consumers, and the red dots represent providers. And this we did by service, so that's why there's so many maps in the report. And then there's 9 charts that provide some more detail relative to those requirements. We can go on to the next one, we'll describe the geographic area. So this year, the state adopted some of the CMS, or the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and they redesignated how they look at access standards within the different counties. And CMS divides access by what's called rural, metropolitan, and frontier counties. Now, in North Carolina, we don't have any frontier counties. Those are things that you find in the, we would think we have frontier counties based on what we learn, what we would perceive, and what we know about where we live. However, frontier counties would be Alaska, in the middle of Nevada and Nebraska. Those are considered frontier counties where it's probably 3 hours to get a gallon of milk. So they redesignated the population requirements for some of those, which meant that we have several counties that are considered metropolitan. And for a lot of us, that was a big surprise when we really started to look at it. But it's really a population of 50,000 people in a city or in a county. So if it has 50,000 people residing in that county, it's considered metropolitan. And rural counties, 10 to 50,000. So when you kind of think about that, you say, wow, that's a metropolitan area. I certainly don't consider us in a metropolitan area because it does take me 20 minutes to get a gallon out where I live. So you can see the dark blue are considered to be metropolitan counties, which includes Buncombe, Haywood, Henderson, Madison, Hopewell, Alexander. I'm sorry, did someone on the phone have a question? Okay.
But Sean, we're talking 52,000, and we're not a metropolitan county, I guess?
It might have had to do with the latest Census Bureau reporting, and that's how these are determined.
The data that they used for this was printed in February 2013. So there were a couple of things, and these are all straight out of your executive summary, that we really felt that that the state needed to hear. First of all, is that since 2009, the funds allocated by DMH for state-funded services declined to over $31 million.
Is that, Tommy, is that so much this year, and the sum of that?
Yes, sir.
Or is that?
Some.
Some of it, okay.
Also, to the geography of Western North Carolina, some of Smokey's members actually have very limited access to basic resources of groceries, general services, and health care.
Based on and I apologize, I didn't tell you what the access standards were. So for metropolitan, that means that any type of provider is expected to be within 30 miles or 30-minute drive time. So even though 30 miles sounds like a lot, 30 minutes in the mountains, it might be 10 miles. So those are the metropolitan standards, which those maps and charts are based off of. And then for rural areas, it's 45 miles or 45 minutes. So we just wanted you to have that perspective, so that's why we wanted to spend some time on this.
Also included in the report is a breakdown of the provider network in just very general numbers.
And this is something I think is very important that we be able to communicate better to consumers and families and providers. Our current provider network has over 439 contracted providers. That doesn't sound like very many. And that's because affiliated with those contracts, so agencies, organizations, hospitals, there are over 2,079 individual licensed practitioners. So a lot of times people will hear that we have 439 providers. We have 439 contracted providers in our network, and they have licensed professionals attached to them. Now that 2,079 number does not include non-licensed employees of those organizations. So anyone that is not licensed in the state of North Carolina, either as a social worker, counselor, a physician, or a nurse, doesn't show up in that 2,000 number. Does that make sense to everyone? So that number's a lot larger. And so a lot of times we have that 439 number in our mind of what our provider network is. This number across, just to kind of give you perspective, is this 2,079 plus all of the what we call Qs, or non-licensed people that are, you know, a lot of the in-home teams, ACT teams, and there's only just a couple licensed people on those teams. So there are a lot more providers affiliated.
Part of the requirements of this report are a community needs assessment survey. It does not have to be a survey, but you have to be able to talk about what the community needs are. And I went over this with Christina Carter last week, and she asked me 3 pretty detailed questions. So I'm going to give you the answers I gave her, because she was absolutely right. We completed this in May of this year. For the state, we did 2 surveys. One was to stakeholders, and one was specific to providers. For the stakeholder surveys, we had 281 responses. There were a minimum of 8 responses per county. Many counties, the larger counties, had many more responses, but the lowest number we had was 8. Participants included family members, members themselves, professionals, including the board, several of our board members, which we truly appreciate the response, CFAC, guardians, DSS representatives, and school representatives. And that's just a very small part of the list. For the provider survey, we received 97 responses in total, with a minimum of 8 responses again per county. The stakeholder and provider surveys covered all disability groups. And we chose some of the significant responses, the most across both surveys. The highest number of responses are here. And for adult mental health services, the perception is that there is a need for ACT and services for comorbid conditions. In child mental health, MST, and again, services for comorbid conditions. For adult IDD services, services for comorbid conditions. We've seen a pattern here. For child IDD service, behavioral specialists and services for comorbid. And for adult substance abuse, outpatient opioid treatment, residential substance abuse treatment, and comorbid conditions again. And for the child, substance use, MST, and comorbid conditions. We also asked 2 additional questions, and these were absolutely open-ended questions. The first one was, what challenges and barriers exist in Smokies catchment that prevent consumers from accessing care? Across both surveys, this is what we got back.
The most interesting part, at least as we're doing this analysis, because we're looking at the analysis in 3 parts. We're looking at the stakeholder survey, so that's very important. We're looking at what our data is telling us, what the number of providers and all, and those 30-minute, 45-minute area that we talked about. And then also our own Smoky staff, what we know about our network. So sometimes the data and what at least people, I think, sometimes understand or perceive are very different. So those are 3 things that we've used to identify our gaps. So very important, the stakeholder survey, which included consumers, families, board members, all the other stakeholders. The data that we used from our own system, just telling us what we know about our own network. And then Smoky staff. And a lot of those, there's things in the data that isn't supported by what we learned from consumers. And there are things from our own staff that wasn't evident in the data. So I think this made it a very, very strong analysis. Does that make sense?
The other question we asked was very simply, what do we need to know? And the biggest answer was that there's a shortage of providers and qualified staff in rural areas.
And I think that's consistent with what we believe we know. So this is validating these things that we understand. We know there's a shortage of psychiatrists, particularly child and adolescent psychiatrists, in almost every community in the United States. And this certainly supports it, and we have it down, so we know the numbers in each of the individual counties and the rural areas. And this is something that we're very aware of and developing strategies around.
Sean mentioned that we looked also at the staff, internal staff perspectives of what was needed. And there were actually 4 areas. Comorbid disorders, bilingual practitioners in counties where the Hispanic population exceeds 5%. Now,
Which counties are those?
off the top of my head, I could not tell you that, but I can get you that information. That is actually, and Sean will help me with this, is a state requirement in addition to just being a recognized need, correct?
Yes, there's a requirement, and that's something that is required in all of our quality audits and requirements. This was something that, again, this didn't necessarily show up in our data. When we look at our Hispanic population and the percentage of providers that speak Spanish and the percentage of consumers, those might match. However, it was our own internal staff that were identifying this need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because the numbers don't really show there's a substantial Hispanic population that doesn't show up in the data.
Right, and the data that we have on Spanish speaking or any other culture, anything having to do with cultural diversity is only what's reported as a data point, right? So our own internal staff are able to identify that for us, and that's going to contribute to our network development priorities.
Sean, maybe I missed it, but what is the comorbid?
Pre-existing conditions, and I don't know,
Okay.
Dr. Nichols, he was, so pre-existing conditions or something that's co-occurring means it could be IBD and mental health or another medical diagnosis.
Okay. Thank you.
And you'll see, and that because that's such a theme, you'll see that in our priorities and strategies, our major priority strategy is the integration of whole person care.
It could mean, for example, that they came in because they have an alcohol issue, but they also happen to have depression.
Right. And I think when you look at a population too, you say, someone with diabetes and depression, until that depression is really attended to, someone's not going to attend to their diabetes. So you imagine all the medical complication that comes from untreated diabetes, that the reason for it not being treated might have a lot to do with mental illness. And we see that across the board with, we talk a lot about the morbidity of consumers that have a diagnosed mental illness, that somewhere between 15 and 20 years, they die 15 or 20 years earlier than the average person. And some of that is, if I'm depressed, I might not really care about my diabetes. I might not be attending to my hypertension. So those are things, and you might say too, a mental health professional might not just be for someone with mental illness either. I know I was always struggle with putting on weight if I'm not exercising, and sometimes you need that coach or you need some encouragement, and then there's that recovery-oriented system of care that fits into that perfectly. So I think as we integrate and reduce the stigma of mental illness, but also change the culture within primary care practices and really start to integrate mental health and substance abuse and IDE services all in one place, we're going to not only see improvement for those treatments, but improvement for all the health conditions. That makes sense?
Thank you.
Internally, there was also a need for outpatient opioid treatment and residential substance use treatment. Based on all of the information we gathered, from stakeholders, from providers, internally, from the data, we were able to come up with 6 priorities that we're going to begin to address over the next year. The first of those being expanding existing programs and developing new initiatives designed to increase integrated and whole person care. Over and over and over, we saw the comorbidity, and this is where we start.
And this is something that is supported in, from consumers and all stakeholders. So the surveys that we sent out is supported by that, is supported by our internal staff for what we know about our system of care today, and we know that it's supported by our provider organizations. And so this is, there's no hierarchy to our priorities here, but you can see that we have this one first. And we've talked a lot about the comprehensive care center model, and the next evolution of that model is going to be to bring in, integrated care. So for all the reasons that we talked a lot about during a lot of different meetings about the comprehensive care model, it is something that is going to be very supportive towards the future of our system of care and whole person care in our catchment area. And we've talked a lot about the expansion of the need for ER diversions or emergency department diversions, and you'll see a lot of even in the executive summary, our priorities and strategies are going to focus on enhancing either the current centers that we have in our system or developing new ones within our catchment area. So this is going to be a major strategy moving forward. And it's not a strategy that's for this fiscal year. This is a strategy that goes well into the future. The next one is, of course, improve the culturally competent and trauma-informed provider network. And this is something that's very, very ongoing. It's actually a requirement. I have to say I've been very impressed with the Provider Advisory Council, in that they've taken a great initiative to try to at least start to identify providers that are on their own taking the initiative to improve this. But this is something that we really want to guide, inform, and provide resources to expanding in our catchment area. And of course, improve the child and mental health continuum. We know that one of our greatest shortages in psychiatry, probably less in psychiatry, but almost all levels of care for children is very challenging, not just in our 23 counties, but across the state and the country. One of the areas in particular we look at is out-of-home placements with children, and are there alternatives, or are there ways to provide that same service closer to our catchment area rather than stay or outside of our catchment area, where families can stay involved with families when they're in care, or what is their capacity to involve families, even if they're, there's a certain specialty outside our catchment area that's only available there. What do we have to do to keep families engaged with kids that and then developing the residential capacity needs for children and adults with those co-occurring conditions. And that's different than developing residential levels of care. This is specific to the co-occurring conditions that we just talked about.
The last one is going to be harder to deal with, and that is addressing the issues of transportation. One of the additional issues we heard over and over is, and again, in the rural counties, how do folks with needs get to where they need to be? How do they get to their appointments? How do they catch a bus that only runs for a very short period of time during the day, or there is no public transportation at all?
For example, one of the things that we're working on with our providers is the increasing community supports for mobile crisis services for this. And for example, part of our comprehensive care model is there aren't very many providers in our network that can, in a way, afford to do this if we didn't support a model that allowed for these types of enhanced services. But this is something I think is very critical, and our mobile crisis, which is our crisis solution initiatives, are really going to support this, and this is a need that, you know, we're not sending a claim up for. This is something that's inclusive in other services, and Duncan could probably talk about this for hours.
Easily.
So the last question is, what are we going to do with all this? We are currently in the process of refining our network development plan to include what we've learned and with what we validated that we already knew.
Just a network development plan is really, this is an analysis of what we just talked about. And network development plan, you could call it kind of a tactical on the ground. This is what we're going to do specific, you know, in each county. And these are all of our initiatives, and these are the things that we need to do this year to move into the future. So we will be presenting that at our provider summit to our providers on September 21st. So that's a product of this analysis.
The other thing we're doing is something that began with all of you all, and that is developing the board-approved fund reserves.
For example, when we talk about these crisis initiatives, you know, that includes, you know, funding facilities, and if we weren't talking about using some of the fund reserves for this, for either the expansion of current programs or the development of brand new ones. I mean, that's really what the direction that we're headed. So I think it's going to be great to really share this with our provider network, saying these are all the areas, these are all the strategies and priorities that we have in our network, and these are our needs. And in that network development plan that's informed based on the information of the gap analysis, you know, providers may identify we can do this, or we can, you know, inquire with providers and say, you know, can you tell us about, you know, can you submit a proposal to us to develop a crisis solution plan for this region or area? So, like I said, there's a lot of depth to this analysis, and there's a lot of planning and strategy that goes into developing the network development plan. But we're very open to any questions, and you have the executive summary, and we will certainly make the entire report available to you.
Oh, I saw in depth at CFAC the two questions that Smokey put down, and I'm gonna say it for the 1000th time that I've said it, is you guys are gonna have to get these questions down to where if you walk into the group home, and I've asked every year that I've ever heard these things being done, and I've never heard anybody walk into two group homes in Rutherford County and sit down and ask an IDD person what they want or what they need. And if you walked in and asked those two questions, these IDD citizens would look at you like, huh? What's Smokey? I have not heard out of any of the assessments that's been done that it's brought down to a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old level that you can walk in and explain it to the IDD community, but it's included in this. And I know out of the 2 group homes in Rutherford County, and me as a guardian, I've never been asked to do one of these, and never has Jerry. So I still get concerned that yes, you can walk in and ask these questions to me or to an MI person or substance, but you do not get these questions down, and you do not take the time to go in and bring me back the information from these gap analysis, what the IDD community needs. And I don't know how you do it. I don't have the answer for it, but somehow you got to do it. Somehow, those 2 questions should have been 4 questions, 2 for MI and SA, and 2 for the IDD community. And somehow or another, you guys keep missing it. Western missed it, and we're still missing it here because we're still not down. It's on to that kind of level, and I don't know how to. I don't have the answer, so I'm not saying I do.
But it sounds like you'll help us find it.
You just, yeah. But we got to do it somehow. We got to do it because Rutherford County has a very high IDD, and when you start looking at this report that we're gonna get from the finance, you're gonna see how much of our budget goes to innovations, to the IDD community. So where are they, and how are you getting this info from an individual that is developmentally disabled? That's my biggest concern. And I don't have the answer, but somehow or another, we gotta figure it out.
And, that's great feedback, because I'm thinking, we'll do the survey again next year, and I'm looking at Ron, because we're required to do this as part of this analysis. But that's not the reason why we do it.
I know.
However, there aren't a lot of requirements around how we do it, so we could work together and include that in the next survey. Does that make sense, Brian?
Absolutely. Sign her up.
I just want to say the transportation issue that y'all brought up so hard in the rural counties, and that ties into our access to care and that performance, and the performance equality committee too. We're looking at that too, and that's a tough fix too.
It is, absolutely.
My question is this, how does all this, she's talking about people walking in the group homes and asking her son, or folks that live in those places that are IDD. Well, did anybody walk into the IMDs and ask any of these folks, and how's all this, which I didn't see anything about the DOJ settlement in any of our, for the next year or so, do we just gonna ignore it, we don't care anything about it, or are we working hard on it? I think we're behind where we need to be, and it hadn't even made it into most of this stuff, or up here, so I kind of like a little bit of them. What's our position on that?
Well, I think you're going to see a lot of us, the CFAC meetings, trying to come up with what the questions should be and the tools that we should use to gather that information.
I mean, it's not even on the radar as anything, as far as I can tell,
Well,
we're going to work on next year.
It is included in the co-occurring, when we talk about integrated care, and as you read through the executive summary, that talks about a lot of our initiatives, and one of those initiatives is the medical for IDD consumers, specific with Dr. Baker.
Well, I'm talking about mental health consumers now in the DOJ settlement.
Okay. Well, we can work together. I'd like to learn more about that, because this is an informed analysis. So I think you're absolutely right. We need to include it in the analysis. I'm probably not answering your question for you, but
It just tells me that these folks that are out there in these IMDs and places like that are not our priority. And maybe this is the wrong time to say it, but I've had more than my share of calls this month, and even an extended family member probably gave birth to an IDD child last week. It's 2 months early. But, so I have a variety of issues in my family and extended family and around me. But I've had everything from calls from a woman whose son was beat her up. He's a substance abuser and she's bipolar. She doesn't even have a phone. Could she access services over the computer? To somebody talking about their mother, whose the grandson is taking their mother's money and they're about to lose their housing, and maybe this is wrong, but I'm going to say it. I found between $5,000 and $10,000 worth of meth 3 weeks ago. I didn't know what it was. We took it to the sheriff's department, turned it in, but we need some education. John is renovating a property, it's an old property, and he has artificial knees, and he's my mate for anybody that don't know. But he said, hey, and 2 weeks ago tomorrow, he said, what are you going to do this week? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, I was wondering if you'd help. If I rode the tractor, would you get out and pick up some sticks so I can cut the grass? Because he can't walk on uneven surfaces. And so I'm next to a major highway in our county on his property, picking up sticks that have fell under the trees. And I found this jar, about like that water bottle you got there, but it's probably a Dick's mayonnaise jar. And it's got tape all around, and I'm throwing sticks in the bucket, and I kind of start to throw that in the bucket, and I just hand it to him, see if he wants to see what's in it. Well, he don't. He sets it on the tractor, and don't even bother, you know, we don't even look at it. You know, it's out next to the highway under a tree. We think possibly somebody's about to get stopped and tossed it. So on Monday, he comes home, and I'm going to the grocery store. And he's on the computer, and I come in, I walk over, see what he's looking at, and he said, come here a minute. And he's looking at dope on the computer, and he said, so he brought me some home. He said, go out there and look in the truck in that coffee cup. I opened that jar up, and he said, my brother thinks it's sand, but I think it's drugs. He said, go out there and look at that coffee cup and stuff I pour a little in, and come back here and look at this computer screen and see if you think it's, and that looks alike. So I said, yeah, I think it does, but I don't know. I've never seen meth before. So we decided, as stupid as we are, to go to the sheriff's department with this cup of dope. And nobody, we're old and we're done, to see how to dispose of it. But thank God, he didn't bring the whole jar. He just put a little cup like this, about an ounce, I guess. So we go to the sheriff's department. I look over the window and I say, and it's 5 minutes after 5. We'd like to talk to somebody, maybe an investigator or somebody. Well, this woman tells me she don't even know if they have anybody available to speak with us. And I told him, I said, you get us arrested on the key. You know, and they have a lot of road checks close to where we live. I just thank God we didn't go through none of them trying to go to the sheriff's department, because I don't believe they would have believed us if we said, well, we're taking this cup of dope back to the sheriff's department to see what it is. But anyway, we get over there and finally somebody named Rochelle or something like that, or Roxanne is leaving, and John calls her over and says, come here a minute, do you think this is dope? And she said, I don't know, but I'll go maybe see if somebody, is that why you're here? And he said, yeah. And she said, well, I'll go see if I can find somebody to talk to. Well, at the same time she leaves, the front desk tells us we'll have to leave and come back later. But they don't know we got a cup of dope in our hand. But finally, an officer comes out, and he's actually on one of these committees with many of you folks. He takes us back. And he says, well, I'm not going to arrest y'all or something like that. And we're like, well, we're really glad we're trying to do the right thing. And then he says, have you got any more? And we say, yeah, we've got a quart jar of it. We didn't bring it all. We just want to have the space. So he said, well, I'll follow you up there and you can turn it over to me. But I mean, we're done. We're talking about this on CFAC, you know, or we're going to, we need some education. People my age, in a way, we did the right thing by turning it in, but we really, after I thought about it, put ourselves at risk going down the road in a car with a cup of this to even take it to the sheriff's department, because if we'd got stopped, they would not have believed us, I don't believe. So I had a real peculiar month, but anyway, we got a quart of meth off the street. But would you folks know what it was if you found it and you was cutting grass and you was out next to the highway at the end of your driveway or yard? I mean, I didn't, he didn't. We know it was something it probably wasn't supposed to be, but would you folks know what it was? What it looked like?
Yeah. Only because I was breathing bad. I think we're gonna have to probably.
There's somebody on the phone that's trying to get a question.
It's Vicki. I want to compliment Special Deputy Pat on the presentation that she just gave, but I need to get off here and do some other things. It sounds like it was a great meeting. I'm sorry that I had car trouble, and I will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Moving right along with our agenda.
I'm sorry.
Don't move. Our next item is the quarterly compliance report from Tracy Hayes, our general counsel.
We're running behind, so I'll try to go as quickly as I can. We We've had 5 anonymous calls to the hotline since our last report. On May 11th, we received a report of alleged fraudulent billing practices at an innovations provider. It was referred to Program Integrity Unit. On May 27th and 28th, we again received reports of an infestation of bed bugs at the same facility we reported on in March. Smokey imposed a referral of suspensions against that provider. The suspensions were lifted when the infestation was resolved. We'll discuss that further in closed session. On June 12th, potential enrollee fraud, failure to report income was submitted to the hotline. That was also referred to the Program Integrity Unit. On August 27th, today, we received a complaint about a smoking care coordinator. It was filed by a non-custodial parent of an adult innovations waiver participant. The allegation was that the direct care staff worker was not receiving a sufficient hourly wage, and the care coordinator was blamed for this. And it was referred to our QM director for grievance resolution and education about the innovations waiver. All of these complaints were anonymous, which makes it harder to follow up and investigate them. In terms of compliance issues identified by the oversight agencies, as Mr. Kennedy noted, Smokey passed all 3 URAC modules with 100%. Recognition should be given to Julie Sinclair's team, in particular Andrea Hartman, who oversaw that process. Our next IMT review, which is our intra-departmental monitoring review by DMA, DMH, and DMA's contractor Mercer, is scheduled for on-site October 27th and 28th. We have records due beginning, it actually began last Friday. All records have to be in by September 18th. We have annual compliance refresher training scheduled for the October staff meetings. In the month of July, by way of example, Smokey completed 5,234 continuous OIG verifications, which are the exclusion checks for providers to see if they are on the list of excluded individuals and entities. That was for 838 agencies, 736 owners and managing employees, and 3,660 practitioners. In the last quarter, we received 552 total Level 2 and Level 3 incidents. That was an increase of 77 over the previous quarter. Level 2 incidents were 495. This is an incident that does not result in permanent physical impairment or significant psychological damage. We had 57 Level 3 incidents, and this is an action that could result in permanent physical impairment or significant psychological damage. In terms of our overall statistics around incidents, 97% of all incidents reviewed by our Critical Incident Committee fall into 3 main categories. 50% of them are deaths, and out of those, 73% are usually undetermined because we are waiting for an ME report. 14% are terminal illness or natural causes. 12% are due to consumer actions, the majority of which are suicide, and 1% was due to a homicide. 33% are allegations, and out of those, the vast majority are of sexual abuse. 14% are inappropriate behaviors, and out of those, the vast majority are aggressive or destructive behavior. Security breach remains the most significant risk facing the organization. We had 79 incidents reported in the fourth quarter. That was an increase of 12 over the previous quarter. None have been determined to constitute a breach. The FY 15-16 budget does include funding for mobile device encryption and a contract with an organization called Clearwater Compliance, which will be helping us with HIPAA risk assessment and security consulting. All emails were automatically encrypted beginning on July 1st. And then we also updated several policies. Our drug-free workplace policy was updated to meet the requirements of our workers' compensation carrier. We revised our weapons policy to clarify that staff are permitted to have concealed handguns in a locked vehicle in a Smokey parking lot if they have a concealed carry permit. And we created a social media policy based on guidance from the National Labor Relations Board to reduce the risk of employee harassment and a privacy breach. Everything else will be discussed in closed session. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we need to hold a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A1 in order to prevent The disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 122C-126(1) or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes, and to consult with attorneys pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A, 3. And
Motion to go into closed session.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of going into closed session, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Michael?
Mr. Chairman, in light of the fact that we supposed to have the leave and we don't report anymore, and that we have the financial report in our packet, would it be appropriate to maybe make a motion to table that until our next meeting, or is there?
Okay.
Make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of tabling the report from the Finance Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any other items for the agenda tonight? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
And there's plenty of food. Take some with you too.